Hi everyone, welcome to this video. I usually don't wear hats. My bangs decided to just rebel. They're going through their reputation era. Love that story for them. I always analyze song lyrics very in depth through the lens of literary analysis. I look at things like metaphors, diction, connotation, things like that to try to decipher the song meaning. Today we're going to be analyzing the song Love Me More by Mitski. This is from her newest album called Laurel. Let's do this. This song title is very important. It gives us a lot of information. It really does. This song title is pretty direct. It's not that metaphorical. When something is very literal and straightforward, it is not a lack of emotion, in my opinion. It is indication that there was a lot of emotion previously. When someone is very emotional, they're in a lot of pain, and when you're in a lot of pain, it's very difficult to think clearly. However, once you leave that very intense emotional state, you sober up emotionally. In this more emotionally sober state, you're able to view things more clearly. The dust has settled, you're able to survey the damages. This is the emotional state where you're able to make more direct statements. That's like the emotional state that I think the protagonist of this song is in right now. The song title, it's also like a command. It's not a question. This song has a lot of ambiguity. We are never told explicitly who this command is directed towards. The protagonist could be saying love me more to their romantic partner, to their ex-romantic partner, to a family member, or even to themselves. Right? It could be like a self-love type of thing. That's actually the interpretation that I'm more partial towards. You can also view this as being directed in general to the audience. So there's a lot of different ways to interpret it. They're all valid, right? Everything I say is just my own personal opinion. For me, what's resonating the most is that this love is about self-love and that this is a conversation that the protagonist may be having with themselves. I want to concentrate on the diction in the first line. The protagonist wants to keep herself at home. The word keep is very significant. It suggests that the protagonist is forcing herself to stay at home, like it's going against her true nature and her true desires. Usually home has a positive connotation. Usually it connotes a feeling of safety, of familiarity, and of warmth. However, here, the connotation of home is not super positive in my opinion. The protagonist wants to stay home so they don't make a certain mistake. So it's kind of like the home here is like a detention center and the protagonist is like barricading herself in this detention center so she doesn't go out and do something bad. So it has a more isolating connotation. It's like a darker connotation. I also find the word mistake to be extremely significant because it's singular. It's not plural. This is one specific mistake that we're talking about. And in the next line, it says that she's made this mistake for 15 years. So this is like a very repetitive sort of pattern that exists in the protagonist's life. And this is really, really sad because the protagonist hasn't been able to learn a way to sidestep this mistake. They keep making it over and over again. They haven't learned the lesson. Also, 15 years is like a very long time. If this mistake was like a person, it would have its driving permit in the United States and it could drive at certain times of the day with a licensed adult sitting next to them. And this mistake could also like have a TikTok account, I'm pretty sure. The next two lines say, I could be a new girl, I will be a new girl. I want to draw your attention to the word girl. There's two possibilities. One of the possibilities is like a chill possibility, but the other possibility is where I'm like, oh my gosh, diction is so important. Pay attention. The first possibility is that this protagonist is literally a young girl, or this protagonist could be the same age that Mitski is. Now, I'm not saying that this song is entirely autobiographical. That's why I keep saying protagonist and not Mitski. However, if we are to view the protagonist of this song as being similar in age to Mitski, between like 28 to 31. That would mean that they're not a girl, they're in actuality a woman, but they are referring to themselves as a girl. The reason I'm saying this is significant is because they say that, and I'm extrapolating here, and I'm also not a psychologist, but they say that trauma freezes you at the age it happened. If we think about this protagonist as being like 30 years old, let's say, and they've been making the same mistake for 15 years, they would have made the mistake for the first time when they were 15 years old, when they were a girl. So that initial mistake could have been a sort of trauma or just a very intense experience that's been causing them to exist in this repetitive cycle of making the same mistake over and over and over again. So the word girl here could suggest that the protagonist is arrested at the age of 15 or the age of a young girl emotionally, even though they're actually an adult. That is how I am viewing this song. I think that the protagonist is older. I think they're like around 30, because it would really fit in like logically with the 15 years lyric. I also want to compare the phrase could be with will be. Could be is more conditional. It's kind of like wishful thinking. There's like daydreaming vibes going on. However, will be is a bit of a progression. Instead of being like a daydream or a wish, it's more like a goal. It has a more definite connotation. I really enjoy that progression. It's like there's emotional movement going on, which I think is positive. Since I am personally interpreting this song as being about self-love, I view those two lines as a conversation that the protagonist is having with herself, where she's promising herself that she's going to make a change. Instead of wishing to be that girl who has self-love, she will be that girl who has self-love. I wish that this would go away. That line is pretty ambiguous because we are not explicitly told what this is referring to. For me, it's referring to the emotions and the general vibes that the protagonist is feeling. She wants these heavy and intense emotions to go away. She wants to feel lighter and happy. You can also view the word this as referring to like a certain situation or a very specific circumstance. The fact that the word wish is used here, it makes me a little bit concerned, because in the lines right before, the protagonist went from I could be a new girl to I will be a new girl, which is a positive sort of progression, but then she goes back to wish. When you wish for something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to put in the work to make it happen. You're more likely to use the word wish when you talk about winning the lottery. You're like, OMG, I wish I could win the lottery, right? It's something that you subconsciously think is harder to achieve, or maybe something you think that you actually can't achieve. So the diction here, the word wish, in my opinion, is not super positive. It's kind of like a step back emotionally from the previous line. But when I'm done singing this song, I will have to find something else to do to keep me here. So when the protagonist refers to singing this song, I find that so incredibly interesting. It reminds me of moments in movies and TV shows where the character acknowledges the camera, kind of like an aside. It shows a lot of self-awareness. It makes me think that the protagonist is using music as a form of escapism. While they're in the process of singing, they're able to feel better. It's like the music is temporarily grounding them, and once the song is over, they're gonna have nothing to like hold on to. Like emotionally, they need to find something else or they're gonna spiral. When it says keep me here, again, that's a little bit ambiguous. The word here could be referring to a few different things. It could be referring to a balanced emotional state. It could be referring to a state where they feel emotionally grounded. It could also mean here, as in the literal moment, not in a dissociated state, but being present. The last line says something else to keep me. On its own, the last line of this verse can have its own meaning, but it does lead into the next verse as well. Mitski does this a few times throughout this song. It's interesting because the last line is trailing off, and to me, it connotes a little bit of anxiety if you want to view this in like a metaphorically emotional way, because the thought is not able to be finished. The last thought of like the first verse, for example, is being led into the second verse immediately. It gives me a vibe of like jumbled thoughts and thinking one thought over another thought. It's not like a stable, balanced state. When you listen to it, it's really cool, but it's metaphorically, in my opinion, very sad. Verse 2, in my opinion, really showcases the protagonist's awareness. There's a metaphorical itch on the protagonist's hand. First, I want to discuss the itch and what it could mean, and then I want to discuss the significance of the hand. An itch is annoying, usually due to an irritant. You want relief from it, right? However, the itch here is a metaphorical itch. I view it as more of an emotional sort of itch. So the protagonist is being bothered by an emotional problem. Another way to think about it is that maybe there's like a scar representing like a painful experience from the past, and the protagonist keeps like scratching that scar, not letting it heal. The fact that it's not healed is what is causing the protagonist to make the same mistake over and over again for the last 15 years. That's kind of how I'm viewing it. I also think it's significant that the itch is on the protagonist's hand. It's in a very like easily accessible place, right? It's not like in a weird spot on their back that they can't reach to scratch. So it's like very tempting for them, and that is probably why this wound hasn't healed. This song and this verse in particular are very ambiguous. I would love to know how you interpret this verse down below in the comments. There is so much repetition in this chorus. We have the word love repeated multiple times and the phrase love me more repeated 1, 2, 3, 6 times. I always talk about how repetition signifies significance. I truly believe that when certain words or phrases are repeated, it is the songwriter trying to give us a message. They're highlighting an important topic. I also do think about the repetition here as being reflective of the protagonist's internal state. I think that they are feeling a lot of emotions and they're maybe feeling a little bit of anxiety. Like, I don't view the protagonist as feeling super balanced. Their emotions are kind of overflowing. So the repetition of love me more, in my opinion, is kind of mirroring that unstable emotional state. The word need is very important. It doesn't say I want you to love me more. It says I need you to love me more. This makes the situation more dire and more serious. The love here is made out to be a necessity. Just like food, water, and shelter, this can also lean into the feeling of desperation a little bit. If you are interpreting this song as being about like a romantic partner or about anyone else other than the protagonist's self, then this is very dangerous. This is a very emotionally dangerous place to exist in when you literally need love from someone else. Being dependent on something that can often be conditional is very dangerous. I'm not saying that you shouldn't want someone to love you. If you are depending on someone to fill up your heart 100%, that is very dangerous. You should be able to fill most, if not all of it up yourself, right? And anything they give you should be extra. The protagonist here, though, sounds like she's empty because we have repetition of fill me up. When you fill something, it's because there's room for it to be filled, right? So she really is depending on someone to help fill her up emotionally. If, like me, you're interpreting this as a self-love scenario, we can view this as a conversation the protagonist is having with herself. And then at the end where it says drown it out, again, it's ambiguous. We don't know what the it is referring to, but I think that it's referring to not pleasant emotions. It's kind of like the protagonist is consciously or subconsciously looking for a quick fix. She really wants love to distract her and to heal her. How do other people live? I wonder how they keep it up. This verse shows introspection on part of the protagonist. They are thinking about people outside of themselves. Perhaps they're at a point emotionally where moving forward or healing seems impossible. When it says, how do other people live? That's such a beautifully sad lyric. This could mean so many different things. Maybe the protagonist is wondering how people live a life that is happier than hers, maybe more balanced than hers. Maybe she's thinking about how people live their lives in relation to their decision making. Like, how do people not make the same mistake over and over again for 15 years? I wonder how they keep it up. I think here the protagonist is referring to how people keep moving forward, how they keep like pushing forward, and perhaps how they keep learning from their mistakes instead of being stagnant in a circle for 15 years. When today is finally done, there's another day to come, then another day to come, then another day to The protagonist is really feeling the weight of every moment. Every moment feels heavy to them, I would assume. The word finally kind of feels like a big sigh. It's not a sigh of relief, it's the type of sigh where you're releasing like pain and emotion. The protagonist is overwhelmed. They're also in an unbalanced state because they're not in the present moment. There is definitely some anxiety within these lyrics. They're not thinking about like what they can do right now. They're thinking about like the next day and the day after and the day after. I feel like they're emotionally drained. They need like to emotionally rest and recuperate. This verse also blends into the next verse. So the last line of verse 3 says, then another day too. Now we're in verse 4. Come back to mine. Let's pretend it ends tomorrow. I think the protagonist here could be talking to another person. They're like, let's just go home together. This is an act of escapism and trying to avoid your problems. She says, we'll pretend it ends tomorrow. Again, the it is ambiguous. It could refer to the problems the protagonist has. They're just gonna randomly end tomorrow. Maybe that's what she's saying to make herself feel better. Or she could be referring to the negative emotions and feelings she's having. Maybe she's telling herself they're gonna magically disappear tomorrow, so everything's gonna be okay. Maybe she's telling herself that the world is gonna end, so like it's fine. There's a lot of different ways to interpret it, but I think that this verse really is showcasing the escapism that the protagonist is wanting because they're feeling too much. Or maybe I should say they're not feeling enough. They are lacking love. Again, there's a lot of repetition in the last verse. We have repetition of I need you to love me more. And then we have love enough to clean me up. And we have repetition of clean me up 7 times. When it says clean me up, I find that very interesting because it suggests that the protagonist is not clean. She is like dirty. Perhaps she is tainted with negativity, negative self-talk, negative emotions about herself, negative belief systems, or maybe someone else made her not clean. Maybe someone treated her poorly and that caused her to need to clean herself in an emotional way. This is a very heartbreaking lyric. The fact that the protagonist does not feel clean is significant. She has awareness of this. So she's suffering and she's aware of the fact that she's suffering and the depth to which she's suffering too. The protagonist knows she needs to be cleansed. An emotional cleansing, maybe like a mental cleansing, maybe even like a spiritual cleansing. She needs like a sort of like rebirth, right? An emotional rebirth. This reminds me a little bit of Washing Machine Heart. In my analysis, I talked about how the protagonist decided that her heart was a washing machine heart, meaning that she thought it was her duty to take other people's emotional dirty laundry and clean it. Other people dumping their negativity on you in that one-sided way is gonna have an effect. One way to think about this verse is in relation to Washing Machine Heart. She needs to be cleaned because she's still dirty from all of the things she washed for other people. That's definitely one way to think about it. I think it's a very similar thing. If you allow people to dump all of these emotional things onto you in a one-sided, unbalanced way, it's going to have a consequence. So that is one way to think about it, kind of in line with Washing Machine Heart and the themes present in that song. I am glad at least that the protagonist has awareness that she has this issue, although it does make it more painful because she's like not in a state of ignorance. You know, ignorance is bliss. But hopefully this awareness means that she's going to take steps to heal. And then this song ends with I need you to love me more, love me more, love me more. I think the use of repetition in this song is really significant and adds a lot to the feeling of anxiety. It makes it feel like the protagonist is at their wits' end emotionally. They need to be healed of what they're feeling. This song does not have a resolution. It's very much like a snapshot at a very specific place in this emotional journey. Any way you interpret it, I think it's sad, whether you're interpreting it in relation to like another person or through the lens of self-love. I think this song is about someone who has neglected themselves emotionally and they are now seeing the consequences. I'm not blaming the protagonist. I think it's so easy to ignore your emotional needs and to overlook like signs that you're emotionally not doing okay and that you need love. When you go without love for a very long time, I think it can reach a point of desperation, whether again it's from an outside source or self-love. That's all I have for this song. I would love to know what you think in the comments below. If there are any other songs from Laurel Hill that you want me to analyze, comment that down below as well. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Please consider subscribing. It really does help grow my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you next time. My hat and I say bye. Bye.